Good morning. This is Barbara Kaufmann, and today I'm going to be speaking with Jon Ramer, who is the founder and steward of the Compassion Games, which has become quite the global phenomenon. I'm going to let Jon describe them to you, but I want you to know that the Compassion Games are a charter partner of the Charter for Compassion, that is, which is a global initiative to spread compassion throughout the world and to make compassion the default position for all human interaction. The Charter now numbers 360 cities around the world with a couple thousand organizations that are partners in 50 countries and counting. That represents almost 9 million people who believe in and have affirmed the Charter for Compassion, which is the blueprint for a more humane narrative on the planet. The Charter was the brainchild of author and scholar Karen Armstrong, whose TED Talk won the annual cash prize and has now morphed into a worldwide movement. Good morning, Jon Ramer. How are you this morning? I know you've been busy with the Compassion Games. You've just finished and we're celebrating one round of games and you're about to start another. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you? For example, what's your background, Jon?
I'm well, Barbara. Thanks for doing this. Glad to be here. Well, I grew up in New York and moved out to Seattle about 25 years ago. And I'm a musician by training. But part of my own spiritual dimension is one needs to give back to the community. So it was the event of 9/11 that kind of got me out of being a business guy and moved on to trying my very best to understand why there's such hate in the world. And then we hosted the Dalai Lama in Seattle in 2008, an event called the Seeds of Compassion. And at that event, it kind of, things came into place for me. And after that event, I was the executive director of a Compassionate Action Network that we started to keep that work going, and recognized Karen's winning the TED Prize and thought that would be a good thing to get behind, and initiated the campaign in which Seattle became the first city to affirm the Charter for Compassion, and put a call out to other cities and started the international campaign for compassionate cities. I was surprised to see other cities respond, and what happened was one city in particular was remarkable in their work and their leadership from Mayor Greg Fisher in Louisville. And we honored them for the way he came to public service with a platform based on health, lifelong learning, and compassion. And the good spirit of the mayor was such that he sent me a letter after they visited Seattle saying they were the most compassionate city in the world and would be so till proven otherwise. And part of why that was so meaningful to me was because when we started our Compassionate Cities campaign, it really wasn't clear, except for we knew that a compassionate city is an uncomfortable city, but what you actually do and how you actually get people engaged. And the idea of collective impact was kind of a term of art that was becoming more popular. This was just around 2009, 2010. And there were some elements to that that seemed apropos. One was you got to have a shared agenda, you got to have a measurement system, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication. So when the mayor put out that challenge, it seemed like a perfect way to actually bring about collective impact, because we came up with simple measures. We measured the number of volunteers, the hours of service, the number of people served, the money raised for local causes. And in doing so, the Compassion Games gave a way to get people off the sidelines out onto the playing field and actually doing service. And I'm amazed at how many people responded so favorably to this idea we call a co-opetition, where you're not cooperating against, but you're cooperating with each other. And that's how the games got started, and it's grown, like I said, quite a bit. The first year, well, the mayor of Louisville said they were so compassionate that they'd come out to Seattle to help us beat them. And I just love him and his spirit, and the city of Louisville is amazing. The people there are totally, like all cities, it's a mixed bag, but their leadership, and as well as from the grassroots level, people are really doing the work that needs to get done. It's an interesting city, and it's the northernmost southern city, southernmost northern city But this is where led me to where we are now, with hundreds of teams having played in the games and over 5 million people having been directly served by it. And I'm honored and privileged to be a part of making this happen. Wow, that's a big intro.
Yeah, that's great though. You said first of all that a compassionate city is an uncomfortable city. So can you say a little bit more about that? And the other thing that strikes me is that you're making compassion measurable, which is
Yes.
kind of a new concept.
Well, in our culture, it's true. What gets measured, is what matters. And there's the diversity of different views on these things. Of course, in my cultural tradition, the world is made through both words and numbers. And therefore, it is important to be able to have a benchmark or a framework for how we build that compassion strength. And so many cultures and so many traditions teach us that service is key. So there are things you can measure there. You can measure the number of volunteers. You can measure the time that they dedicate. Of course, that's not the whole story. And it's really in the stories of what people do that the inspiration occurs. But we felt we needed to have both. And we've used the measures to demonstrate our capacity to build strength over time. And that's an important part of how we're going to make this progress. The fact that it's an uncomfortable city means that there's a certain, it sounds sweet to be a compassionate city, but the truth is there's a lot of pain and suffering, a lot of social isolation, disconnection. In this age in which we are so connected, it's ironic that at the same time so many people feel disconnected and feel isolated. So the uncomfortableness I speak to is the authenticity that arises when you realize there are real problems in this world and there are people hurting in this world, and how we relate to the strangers in the world may be the most important measure of our own compassion. So the truth is, if we're going to fix these problems, we need to get to the root of them and let the authentic voices be heard. And we see it in so many of these struggles that are going on in the world today. So many places people are oppressed and people feel powerless. And the truth is they have more power than they realize, and compassion is one of those enormous sources of goodness in the world.
So the compassion games, where did the inspiration for that come from, and how did designing the games, how did that evolve?
Well, like I said, the letter from the mayor was a joke, but it was tongue-in-cheek. I swear I had a dream once of the monk Olympics, where the monks were competing for the humblest monk. I thought that was so funny. I like this idea of culture hacking, reframing certain things. That's why Compassion Games, our tagline is survival of the kindest. That's why we use the term co-opetition, because actually the root of the word competition is competere, which means to strive together. So, and sports is a big part. Look at what we put into the Olympic Games. And we honor our physical abilities. Well, what about our social and emotional abilities? So for me, the Compassion Games and hopefully the Compassion Games movement would recognize and celebrate and honor those expressions of kindness and caring that happen every day that may not go recognized. And part of the games is posting it to a report map so we can elevate that and other people can see actually what people are doing. And there are so many examples. They played the Compassion Games in prisons. They've just in the games we just finished, we came to get to know people who are really doing remarkable things in the world. In the United Arab Emirates, they had 34 teams that participated. And one of the leaders there is the Green Sheik, who's working on environmental protection and mobilizing youth from 18 different countries. So the idea for the games is really bring creative expression to caring and kindness. And when you see it, when you watch the reports, you get a feel for, my God, there's so much good going on in the world that's underreported that people don't know about. And that's what we really want the games to help amplify.
I understand you have a partner in this grand experiment, Summer Albertson, and a lot of the background work with tallying the results. She's active on Facebook. It's impressive.
Summer's amazing. And actually, the story with Summer is such a good one because it came during the Compassion Games. And she's a force of nature unto herself. But together we have the privilege of doing something we love and loving each other in the process. She cares for the organizers as well as our social media. So she's a remarkable gift. And the truth is, like these things, you never know when they're going to happen. We were out at a compassion activation station that a friend of mine had organized in Fremont during the games a few years ago. And I jokingly say she must have had the activation station turned up high because Summer appeared. And it wasn't too long after we realized that the friendship we had started was more meaningful than just being friends. And she is the love of my life, and she is a blessing. Anyone who knows her, deals with her, realizes that she is so conscious and mindful and awareness and loving and committed to good in the world. And she brings her heart and soul to the Compassion Games. Thank God.
You know, this all sounds very visionary, John. Would you say that you're a visionary? And what do you think it takes to be a visionary? So if you could tell us a little bit about the vision and visionaries that are connected.
Well, I'd like to think of myself as a realistic optimist. I don't really understand how we get to be who we are. It's some mix of who our parents are and the way we were brought up. But there's in the tradition in which I come from, when we wonder these most deep questions, what's our purpose here? It's to mend, heal, and transform the world. In Hebrew, it's called tikkun olam. And so the mystery of life kind of lends us to what are we going to do while we're here? And how do we do it in such a way that when we're done, in fact, there's this beautiful song, I won't sing it, but the words are very simple. It says, when you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries, you rejoice. And I love that. And so I'm trying to live my life so that I'll rejoice when I die and feel as if I did what I could with what I had while I was here. It gives me great pleasure. It's always the funny thing about service and dedicating yourself to other people is that it's the best thing you can do for yourself. And I love that the story of Summer, the reflection of that, and so many other things that I'm doing and have done with my life. But, my dad was really a visionary in ways. I mean, he was a remarkable artist, but he had a lust for life and a passion for caring. And thanks to him and my mom and the way I was brought up, this just seems like the right thing to do. And we all make music, actually. I would think we'd probably get to a better place sooner if we just tried to sing together. Words are messy, we're easily misunderstood, and the harmony that I find in music is what I'm really seeking in everyday life. So there you go. That's the best I can offer you from a realistic optimist.
That sounds actually sounds visionary, but it also sounds a little bit like a soul mission. And as I talk to people, I find that everybody is looking for what's my purpose, or what did I come here to do? What is my mission? Sounds like you may have found yours.
Yeah, well, you never know. It's an open question, right? Life is humbling, and you got to be willing to discover. Like I say, be prepared to be surprised. And I didn't expect that it was the Compassion Games. In fact, that's the joke in this, is that for all these years, like with cigarette smoke, people knew smoking was bad for them, but they would keep smoking. And it wasn't the data. You would think all the data would somehow make an argument and convince people. But that's not the way many people got off smoking. It was a lot of the peer pressure and secondhand smoke and, being ostracized and forced to step away. I was surprised when I told people that the mayor of Louisville says they're the most compassionate city, and people would respond, well, how can I help? How can I get involved? I did not expect that to be the motivator that it's turned out to be, but it is that way. People have a pride in their place, and, you know, whatever it takes to get people involved. That's the thing. There's a space. If we don't change our direction, we're going to end up where we're headed. And therefore, how do we make change? You know, it takes the will and the way. And that's been part of the mystery in all this, is that in the face of everything that's, you know, challenging us, it's easy to just want to turn your back and say, forget it, I can't do anything about that. And I understand that. Some days I feel that way too. But on my best days, it's, no, we can do this, but we need to do it together. So what's going to bring us together? And I can't imagine anything more unifying than the idea of compassion. It transcends the ideologies, belief systems, nationalities, cultures. And in that way, that's why I'm such a big fan of compassion, because it's something to get behind. It's something to work for. It isn't weakness. It's definitely strength. Love does win, but it takes fierce compassion. And that's what I hope the games will be a way to ignite and spark in people's hearts and in their everyday lives.
So it sounds almost like there are multiple benefits to being part of the Compassion Games. Can you say a little bit more about that and give us a few examples of how it's played out?
Well, the truth is the games are just a vehicle by which people do service, do kindness, acts of kindness, whether they be random or organized. The games is really, if it's working well, it's invisible. It's just an excuse to get people together. We do these 5 co-opetitions throughout the year with a thematic approach. So in January, there's MLK Day, and then World Interfaith Harmony Week, the first week of February, then Earth Week around Earth Day, and then annually we do the Global Unity Games in September, and the Giving Games in the first week, the last Tuesday, the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving. But it's just to get people to come together, organize themselves, look at the challenges that their community is facing, think of creative ways to go out and address those challenges, whether it's painting someone's house who can't do it themselves. There's a guy, Bob G. in Louisville, he calls it Repair Affairs, and he's a no-charge handyman. And, you know, then there are people who've packed thousands and thousands of meals for hungry people down in Dallas, Bob Barker, and his church and community there have been a huge part of bringing food to people that are hungry, and not just in Dallas. They sent 20,000 meals during the Global Unity Games to Syria, to Syrian refugees. So service is transforming, and that's what we hope the games sparks people. If some people haven't volunteered before, or a chance for them to get engaged again, I'm confident that in that experience, especially what happens, Barbara, when 2 groups who don't know each other come together to serve a third party, that's usually a miracle. It's amazing because they come to learn each other and know each other, and then they're collectively able to give to that other party. And that's usually, I've heard so many stories where that model has really made a difference in communities. And that's part of the challenge we're facing. To build resilient communities, you've got to get to know each other. And to get to know each other means you've got to be willing to talk to people that aren't like you. And I've spent a long time doing that, and it's never easy. You need to be authentic, you need to be sincere and open. But like I love to say, connect through your similarity, but then innovate through your diversity. And we can use those differences as a source of strength as opposed to a way to justify staying apart. And we've been apart from each other too long, and it's reflective in the challenges we're facing as a society right now. We've got to stop.
Certainly reflected in our current politics.
I know. This is quite an amazing election we're watching here.
The fear of the other.
I know. People are really hurting.
Yeah, it sounds like an antidote to all of that, what you're doing.
I don't know. It could be. It is for me when it is, I want to be so careful. I don't know what's right for anybody else than myself. And hopefully in the process of modeling this and living this, It's going to inspire others the same, or some variation of it that I'll learn from. I mean, we're all in this kind of learning and healing journey. In fact, the indigenous say that learning is healing and healing is learning. So they kind of go hand in hand.
So this Global Unity Games that you just completed, I know that you were celebrating that.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that round goal? And you mentioned green sheet to me, and I had never heard of that before. That's pretty amazing.
I know. I never heard of the green sheet either. Well, it's so funny because here we are in an age in which there is such great divide. To the idea of putting forward the global unity game, that's part of the culture hacking, right, that I was talking about earlier. It's like, are you kidding me? Global unity right now when everybody's so divided? Well, when else? If not now. But it forced us to really ask ourselves, what are we talking about? What do we mean by global unity? So we define that as different, a world of different people with different nationalities, cultures, different belief systems, different ideologies, who are able to commit to learning, playing, working, and living well together. That's really our goal in all this. And to be able to listen past our differences, to maintain respect. So we had amazing partners who, in organized teams, so Play for Peace, United Religions Initiative, for example, has brought 265 teams. There were thousands and thousands of people who participated. And the report map, so after you've done playing, so there's 4 steps of the game. You sign up to play, you play your heart out, then you report on the report map. And then those stories from the report map not only include we call the compassion impact measures, so we have some numbers, but they also are stories that people tell, and we ask them not just to describe what they did, but reflect upon the impact. So that was amazing. One United Roar, there was a group in South Africa that organized a march to preserve the lions and rhinos. And they said because adults need to get their roar back too, And it's just amazing when you read, especially when young people are seeking to find unity in their community. And there are a lot of communities where there's real hate and there's been real pain. And how do we undo some of that? Just go on that report map and it'll bring you to tears. I mean, you'll see what people are capable of. And we've grouped and are organizing around the UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. We think that's a very unifying framework. And there's 17 measures that goals. So whether it's, better education, health, zero hunger, ending poverty, climate action, which is such a major issue, of course. These are things you'll see stories on all these different dimensions of healing and global unity. And, it turned out it was amazing. And it's really challenging, just to be honest about this. It was over 450 reports that were submitted. And we feel here at, being the platform on this, that everyone should be read and appreciated. So it took a lot of work to get to that point where we can really say, well, what happened? And put together a report. There is a Prezi, we use Prezi to put a presentation together so people can kind of walk the field for what happened during the games and hopefully get inspired to the things they may do in their community. It's a big road to hoe, and I'm grateful for it. But it like when you host a party, there's all the preparation, and then the party happens, and when the party's over, you've got all this cleanup to do and all this work to do. It took us weeks after the Global Unity Games to make heads and tails of what really happened and be able to summarize it in a report.
Wow. It's an amazing accomplishment. It sounds like the compassion games you could do pretty much, you can design your own game, is what you're saying. There's no.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we've been approached by people who have. I have a deck of them here, Acting Kindly. And Greg, actually Nemo Patel hooked us up, and he put Acting Kindly cards together to play a game. So, I mean, the games could be kind of, in this case, organized and structured like this. or really can just be inspired. You know, there's a game about appreciating different cultures' foods that play for peace plays. And so, yeah, the idea of the game, and these are serious games, but they also be playful and fun, is to really get us out of our comfort zone, is to take us to a place in which it's okay to try new things and act a little differently. And in doing so, hopefully, some discoveries about who we can be and what's possible when we bring compassion to life.
Sounds like it develops relationships too.
Yes, yes.
And collaborative things, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that some people, you know, really love the competitive nature of this thing, okay? And that way there brings people together who may not have been together before to form a team and work cooperatively. And that's inspiring to see. And the reports reflect that. There are many examples of that.
You've had hardly had time to catch your breath, so I'm wondering, you've got another initiative coming up, don't you? What's next, John?
I know. No, I know what's wrong with me. You would think. But we said we do it, so we are, and it's really inspiring the way it's unfolding. So what happened was when we first did the games, this was 2012 was the first year, and the first year was a draw with Louisville, although they did a lot better than we did. They were kind enough to accept the draw. But the games, the Global Unity Games, happened in September, from September 11th to the 21st. That's a good time to do it. Others had already framed those 11 days. Partners of ours recognized as a history to when 9/11 actually happened in 2001. It was the opening day of the General Assembly. That was the International Day of Peace. People don't know that, but it was. And then this 11 days going to, you know, from 9/11 to the International Day of Peace emerged as 11 days of global unity. The problem with that is for schools. They've just come back to school, and a number of organizers said those dates are just not that ideal for youth in schools. So we said, okay, we'll do a different co-op petition. And what happened is there's this fabulous initiative organized through the UN Foundation and the 92nd Street Y in New York City. So, you know, everyone's aware of Black Friday. This happens right after Thanksgiving. And I never knew until years ago why it was called it Black Friday. It seemed like ominous. It was like Black Monday with the stock market. But actually, black here means profit. And that's the day that all the retailers, many retailers, go into the black, okay? And then the on-the-ground retailers came up with Black Friday. Well, the cyber retailers came up with Cyber Monday. And, you know, more buying and consuming. So other folks, not us, had this idea, well, why not Tuesday? And so Giving Tuesday emerged. And what's happened is the Giving Games are kicked off with Giving Tuesday. So it's the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It's not always the same date every year. This year it's November 29th, this year being 2016. And we're partnering with the 92nd Street Y. And in fact, Summer and I are planning to be there at the Command Central, 92nd Street Y. And we're going to go for 12 days, this competition, because December 10th is Human Rights Day. And this whole co-op petition is focusing on youth, focusing on celebrating generosity and giving. And, you know, each day during the games we send out missions, and we'll do that again. And the amazing connections, what's happening, we did this compassion relay. So for the Global Unity Games, it was really successful. We organized a dream team of champions of compassion who passed the compassion torch. And we're doing something similar here. We're actually planning to light the torch on November 7th. That is the kickoff of the climate action talks happening, the COP22 in Marrakesh. And the chairperson for the Compassion Games and my partner in this is Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr. He's going to be in Marrakesh with the Green Sheik. And we're reaching out to Leonardo, who's going to be there, DiCaprio, he has a film out. And then the torch is going to go from Morocco to Panama, where there's Peace and Dignity runs. There's young people who have been running from Argentina and from Alaska to meet in the center of the Americas, see the reunion of the eagle and the condor. and Phil will be there. There's a 4-day closing ceremony, and each one of these stops with the torches, they put out what we call a call to play. And then we're going to bring the torch to Standing Rock, given the remarkable uprising that's happening there and unity there. So many tribes are recognizing this is kind of a cultural flashpoint to say, wait a minute, here, enough. And of course, you see, we were just talking before we started this call, militarization of the police, and the way we're defending these oil companies, these banks who are funding these pipelines that really are putting our water at risk. And it's the First Nations and Native Americans who have the wisdom to recognize that, hey, water is sacred. Don't get me going on that, because that's such a big part of compassion. Is not just for ourselves and others, but for Mother Earth. And Phil has been such an important voice in that for so long, and we follow his lead. So from there, we're going to take the torch and eventually end up in New York City for the actual 10 days. We'll be moving the torch around. Right now, we're in the process of reaching out to the different youth-led organizations to be a part of the Giving Games and to have their torch passing bring light to the remarkable work they're doing. There's so many great organizations doing remarkable things in the world. What I love about this Compassion Relay is it helps link together those groups and let them be known collectively for what they're focusing on doing.
So, if I understand this, it takes place both in reality and in virtual reality. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the torch passing is virtual, except in this case, actually it's going to be physically. So Phil will take the torch, the Compassion torch. We have different prototypes up here. Here's one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, hold on. I have another one here. Let's see if this one. Well, here we go. Got another torch here. Oh, God. We have others that we've used. But Phil will torch physically. Yes, it is fun. That's part of the
follow this whole event is what you're saying, right?
Yes, follow it online. Now, the thing I didn't mention that's probably even amazing is that Hereditary Lane has worked with many years. I had the privilege to meet with Arthur Looking-Morse. He's the spiritual leader of the Sioux Nation. And we're going to host on December 10th a Wopila. Wopila is a Oceti-Sakowin term for a giveaway ceremony. One of the ironies in all this history, Barbara, if you look close, here in the Pacific Northwest, and particularly the tribes, had a tradition. It was called potlatch out here, where they would compete in giving. And the idea of competitive giving, we came along and banned that. We actually outlawed the potlatch. And it was cited as being un-American, that there should be such an emphasis on giving. And it's just ironic. So, but the Wopila comes out of Oceti-Sakowin is actually the name of the 7 council fires. The term Sioux, that's not the Native American term. That was a French word. It actually has a pejorative meaning. So the Lakota and Dakota tribes, the Oceti-Sakowins, as they're known, have this ceremony called the Wopila. And it is a giveaway ceremony, and it's giving thanks for all that we've been able to accomplish, all the good in the world. So the Giving Games this year is going to end with Wopila. Not quite sure how we're going to do it all. We're working on that right now. But it's in tune with the Giving Games, obviously, and that's also Human Rights Day. So December 10th will be that day, and we hope that we're going to be able to then celebrate all the people that we passed the torch to during the relay that started before the games and then took place during games. It's got a nice symmetry to it, but the truth is we're still in the formulation stage to work out all the details. But stay tuned on the CompassionGames.org website. People can stay in touch with what's unfolding there.
That's amazing. And the Indigenous have the answer for Chief Arvo Looking Horse just put out a call to religious leaders, I think. Did that happen today or yesterday to meet at Standing Rock?
I'm not surprised. Arvo is remarkable. I'll tell you a quick story that happened a few years ago. this treaty signing thing. Phil has been it just was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I was in Randall, South Dakota. We had started this gathering, international gathering, to protect Earth from the tar sands projects. And all these pipelines, at that time Keystone was really the one that we were most concerned about. And actually, years later, after this event, the Obama administration cited this as one of the examples of a turning point, and it really was. And there was a treaty that the Hontuan and the Pawnee Nations signed in 1853, I think. And part of why that was so important was because the government, the U.S. government, was witness to that signing, which affirmed the fact that these are sovereign nations who have the right to enter into treaties with each other. And so Faith spotted the eagle, had a dream, and went back to this treaty. And it's really Vine Gloria, which is one of Phil's relatives, has written extensively about this. And this gathering at Randall was intended to sign this treaty in ceremony to protect the sacred. And the first time ever women was able to sign a treaty, and it was Faith and other women there signed it. It's a remarkable turning point. And on the second day, the ranchers, the farmers, the environmentalists were given the chance to speak. And it was unbelievable, Barbara, because the irony of this. So imagine ranchers, white mostly, standing up and talking about how they're going to shoot the government because the government's coming in and taking their land, using eminent domain. And the Native Americans, First Nations, calm down, calming them down, And I remember this woman standing up saying, it's so bad, and then someone shouted out, yeah, they're treating you like Indians. And there was a silence in the room. And Orville was there, so was Leonard Crow Dog. And Orville, looking horse, went up to this woman and shook her hand and said, welcome to the tribe. And this formed the new CIA, the new Cowboy Indian Alliance. And that moment, I'll never forget. I mean, I realized I was witnessing history here. There was a coming together and healing around this. And then the Cowboy Alliance went back to Washington, and there was a big part of the ceremony there. teepees were put on the National Mall, and to really bring unified action to stop the Keystone Pipeline. And that one won. That one we were able to be a part of the stopping of Keystone. The truth is that it's over. And there are so many of these pipelines, most people don't know. They're just clueless, as I was. Richard Kinder, one of the founders of Enron, bought the Enron oil operations and founded a company called Kinder Morgan. And they're attempting to triple the volume of tar sands oil coming out of Alberta. And the point at which you go out to the ocean is on unceded land by the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, who've been fighting this little tribe. It's amazing. And Chief Dan George is from this tribe, and they are, determined that they're not going to let this happen. And why are they doing it? They're not doing it, believe me, they have no money. They put up a little money fees to fight this. But they're doing it for all of our children. They have moral authority, and including Kinder Morgan and their kids, because they know this is not right. And there's such risks we're putting ourselves at. These are serious risks. People don't understand what's going on in these pipelines. For instance, with this bitumen, this stuff from tar sands is so thick that they can't get it to move through the pipes unless they put the solvent in there. And the solvent they put in is proprietary. They don't even have. And these are really the great leaders of our time. These are people who are putting themselves at risk and risking what they have because they're doing the right thing for 7 generations. If you just took that one principle, that you're supposed to make decisions for 7 generations, my God. I mean, that sounds like, it's become a brand in America. Towels. But the thinking that way, where you realize the impact of what you had, that is so beyond our culture. And that is deep in the bones of the indigenous people. And there's so much to learn from them and wisdom that they carry. Shame on us for not being able to honor these treaties that we signed, not being able to recognize the people who are putting themselves at risk on our behalf. What are they trying to do instead? They're trying to stop a pipeline that puts millions of people's water at risk. And we're, got the military in there. We're going to shoot these people. I mean, what are we thinking here? And in the name of what? Now, I know we're all hooked on oil, and everyone's going to say that. Yeah, they all use gas to drive there. Yes, it's true. We've got to get off it. But there are other alternative energies, and if we had as much dedication and devotion to using those, we'd be there a lot sooner. We don't need this kind of destruction of the earth in the name of greed. It's so short-term self-interest. That's what's driving us. Me first, you know. Sorry to be so.
No, I completely understand. I understand that we only have about 6 years to turn this around, or the carbon will exceed what we are able to handle, and we will start down the path of extinction. That's how serious it is. So what strikes me about all of this, John, is that people are feeling overwhelmed. They feel a lot of grief about, they know in their hearts of hearts what's happening with the planet, and yet they feel helpless because there's nothing they can do. But it sounds to me like getting in compassion games just may be the tide that turns it. You know, that compassion just may be the antidote to all of this. So I congratulate you on, what you're doing, and pretty amazing stuff. And I would encourage people to look up the legend of the eagle and condor. It's quite a story, and I would encourage them to look up Marvel, Looking Horse, and
Philly Jr. too.
And some of the people that are instrumental in this movement, and become a part of healing the earth. We certainly have the technology to do it. It's just a matter of turning ourselves in the right direction. So thank you so much for doing that.
My pleasure.
Online, we can find the UN Sustainability Goals at the Charter for Humanity.org.
Yep.
And so your website is what? Repeat how we go about finding out more about the Compassion Games. Where do we go and what do we do, John?
It's compassiongames.org. And you can go there, and there is on the menu an option for a report. That'll take you to the report app. But you can sign up to play, or you can sign up just to stay informed. Everyone who signs up is an agent of compassion. And we encourage you to play in one or all of the competitions that happen throughout the year. And it's free. And
it sounds like fun.
Sounds
like a lot of fun.
The more people play, the more people win. That's the way I like to think about it. So you can't lose the Compassion Games. And game on.
To be like everybody wins in this game.
It's one of those games.
Also, you have a
Facebook page, don't you, for the Compassion Games? Go and like the Facebook page. Does that give us updates about what's going on then?
Yes. So there's actually a Facebook page where you can be a fan, and there's a Facebook group which is closed, but it's only so we can share files and stuff amongst organizers. Everybody's welcome. So if you want to be on our Facebook group, it's Compassion Games. If you want to be on our Facebook page, it's Compassion Games Survival of the Fittest. And I hope to see you there.
Okay, so, well, thank you so much for spending the time with us today, and to come for all the work that you does too, for your vision and your inspiration, and for stepping forward to put this into action, compassion.
Yes.
To actually putting numbers and results on compassion, that it's not some kind of amorphous idea, but that it's actually boots on the ground. And I'm a believer in compassion, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate all the efforts you reaching out to me. And this is one of the many expressions of what we're doing, and I'm honored to be a part of the movement.
Yeah, indeed. But when people come together, there's always that something happens that is always greater than the sum of its parts.
That's right. You say, and everyone will know that everyone did it.
Wow. I think that's a good thought to end with. So I wish you well, John, and we'll watch for the announcements about the upcoming games that are taking place from November 29th through December 10th, correct?
That's right.
and follow
That's
you
right.
online.
We can watch what happens. We can become a part of this. We can do our own compassion game in whatever way that we're moved to do that, and be part of a big movement to change the world.
Yeah. Maybe so.
Maybe we'll make compassion the biggest game on earth.
Wouldn't that be good?
Thank you, John. Thanks for spending time today.
Sure. Much appreciated. Bye for now.